I feel the Spirit moving in me. I feel the Spirit moving in me.
But right now, it's time for our guest speaker. As we know, Blaine is out of town taking care of very important things. And so it's time for guest speakers. And we are blessed today to have Reverend Nancy Worth. Reverend Nancy Worth was ordained as a Unity minister in 1991. Before that, she was a dancer in New York City, sales manager for a newspaper syndication company, former owner of the Lahaina News with her husband Bill, and a campaign assistant to raise $31 million to help build the Maui Arts and Cultural Center. Reverend Nancy has served Unity churches in Florida, Texas, Georgia, and Washington. She was honored to be asked to sit on the platform with His Holiness the Dalai Lama when he appeared at Emory University in Atlanta, and she's a proud member of the Martin Luther King Jr. Board of Preachers of Morehouse College in Atlanta. Reverend Nancy is married to Reverend Bill Worth, also a Unity minister, former newspaper editor, and author. The Revs, Bill and Nancy, are retired. Good for them, smart move. And in 2016, they happily moved back to this beautiful island of Maui. Ladies and gentlemen, Reverend Nancy Worth.
Thank you, Adam. Good morning. Good morning. It's so great to see a lot of familiar faces here. It's great to be back. So, whoops, I'm going the wrong way. Why me, God? Why is this happening to me? Have any of you ever uttered those words? Why me? Why now? Why this? Can I see some hands? I'm not the only one. Good. We've all been there, done that, right, at some point. Maybe you've even heard another person say, why me, God? Or maybe you said it about another person, a family member or a friend saying, why is this happening to her, to him? What's going on here? But sometimes another reason could possibly be that we say, why me, God, is not necessarily that we're going through a challenge in our life, but maybe it's going through a life-changing experience that we're being faced with at the moment and walking through. In 1988, we had been here for 5 years on Maui, but we got to the point where we sold our weekly newspaper, the Lahaina News, to the Maui News. And we had a lovely home. As Adam was saying, Bill was the editor of the Lahaina News without the headaches of ownership, and I was the assistant to the campaign director working on the $31 million capital campaign to build that gorgeous Maui Arts and Cultural Center. I'm so proud of that. Yeah, it was very exciting. Life was so sweet. And then all of a sudden, I was in prayer one day, and I heard this still small voice. And at the time, I was very involved in Unity. It was actually when it was down in Waikapu. Some of you remember that little storefront. It's now a little boutique, but it used to be Unity Church on Maui. And that's where I started. And I was platforming, I was giving some talks, I was actually flying back to Unity Village to work on classes to become a licensed Unity teacher. But I was at home here on Maui in prayer, and I heard that still small voice. I want you to be a Unity minister. Apply to ministerial school. And I'm like, what? You want me to do what? It was never even in my radar, I'm studying to be a licensed Unity teacher. Isn't that enough? And the voice I kept ignoring that voice. And you know what happens when you ignore that voice? I know, good luck. Patricia says, it gets louder and louder and louder until I got to a point where I could not ignore it. And so I said, what? You want me to move from Maui to Missouri? It snows there. But it was around the time when I was taking a trip to Missouri, to Unity Village for more classes. And I used to love, if you've ever been to Unity Village, you've probably sat in the Peace Chapel. And I used to do that all the time, loved it. And again, I'm sitting there, quiet, peaceful meditation, and then the voice. Apply to ministerial school. So I get up from the Peace Chapel and I walk over to the administration building and I go into the office and I say, okay, give me the application. I went home, applied, got called for interviews, got accepted, and before I knew it, we were moving from Maui to Missouri. And while the movers were packing us up, I was just like this gal in the image. I was like, why me, God? I would walk down to the ocean. I would sit on the beach. I would look around at all this gorgeous magnificence and say, why me, God? And then a voice loud and clear said, if not you, then who? And I realized that my life was not about self-gratification. My life was, there was something bigger in my life that was trying to emerge. And I always, even before I knew about Unity, I always trusted that voice within. And I always knew when it was time to move on. I mean, I knew when when it was time to move from my dance career on and off Broadway in New York City to newspaper syndication. I knew when it was time to move from newspaper syndication to owning our own newspaper. I knew when it was time to sell the newspaper. I mean, I just had this inner knowing, when that time was to move on. And now my life was heading me in a direction I never in a million years dreamed of. There was a story. One day, a young boy came home from football practice and he collapsed with 104-degree temperature. And the doctors informed the family that it was polio. And this was before Dr. Salk and the polio vaccine. The doctor informed George of the horrible truth. The polio has taken such a toll on your body that you will probably never walk again without a limp, and your left arm will be useless. Barely able to speak, George whispered, "Doctor." "Yes," the doctor said, leaning over the bed. "What is it, my boy?" "Go to hell," George said with a voice filled with determination. And the next day, the nurse found him lying on the floor. And the shocked nurse said, "What's going on?" George, just calmly lying there, said, "I'm walking." He refused any use of braces or crutches. Sometimes it would take him 20 minutes to get out of the chair, but he didn't want any aids. George was destined to spend the next 3 fall seasons in the hospital. In 1948, it was after he stepped on a rusty nail. In 1949, it was tonsillitis, just before he was to sing in an audition for Phil Harris. And in 1950, it was 3rd-degree burns over 40% of his body, and both lungs collapsed after an explosion had set George's body on fire. But after each challenge, George came back stronger and more sure of his ability to overcome any obstacle. He read that if one looks at the roadblocks, he isn't looking at the goal. And armed with the gifts of spirit and the laughter of the soul, George Slater entered the world of show business and revolutionized television by creating and producing such innovative shows as, if you can remember, Laugh-In, He created and produced that. American Comedy Awards, many other shows. And he also won an Emmy for his special on Sammy Davis Jr. He had literally walked through a furnace, and he had come out of it with a soul as strong as steel, and he used it to entertain a nation. Pretty remarkable. Helen Keller once said, "Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experiences can the soul be strengthened, vision cleared, ambition inspired, and success achieved." And so it's not what happens to you. It's how you react to what's happening that makes all the difference. It means staying connected to God, especially when what's happening is not and is the last thing that you want to be happening. Shakespeare said, "It's nothing either good nor bad, but thinking makes it so." And so just consider, what if we could take all of our experiences and not label them good or bad, but just see them, because we're the ones that label them, and just be able to see our experiences as neutral, neither good nor bad. Jesus says a very interesting thing at the beginning of chapter 9 in the Gospel of John. Jesus and his disciples are walking through the streets, and they come across this man who was born blind from birth. And his disciples asked, "Rabbi, who sinned here, this man or his parents, causing him to be born blind?" The disciples are asking, whose fault is it? Who's to blame here? Is it his fault? Is it our fault? Is it his family's fault? Why is this happening to him? Why is he blind? And Jesus just simply said, "You're asking the wrong question." It's the wrong question. You're looking for somebody to blame, but there's no one to blame here. Look instead for what God can do. Look instead for what God can do. So Jesus is saying, don't ask why. That's the wrong question. But look at what God can do. Look for the greater something that is trying to emerge, that is trying to come forth through you. Now, this means that we have to learn to live from a place within our own being where, when the most difficult thing is happens, that we don't lose our ground, that we don't lose that which sustains us. And that is called trust. This is faith. And it's the faith 2.0 that Reverend Blaine talked about last week. And it's taking responsibility for your life. It's knowing God is in charge no matter what is happening. And you will make it through whatever it is that you're going through. You will, because God is here. God is in the midst. Love is in the midst. Trust it. In 2014, it was December 2014, I was the senior minister at Unity of Bellevue in Washington. And we, on Christmas Eve, would have a burning bowl service. We'd do it early in the evening so people could go off to their New Year's Eve parties. And just as I'm getting ready to go to the service, I get a phone call. And the voice on the other end says, "I'm sorry to tell you, but you have cancer." Not the thing I wanted to hear, especially as I'm trying to go into a service. But I had been called back because it was breast cancer. I had images that were suspicious. They call you back, and then you have to wait. And the radiologist said, "I thought you'd want to know before the long holiday weekend." And, And I'm thinking, why call me on New Year's Eve and spoil my whole night? You know? But it was kind of like a gut punch because my mother had died of breast cancer. My sister had died of breast cancer. 2 cousins, 2 aunts. Breast cancer was not friendly to my family. And so here I thought, oh, I escaped this. But here, this diagnosis. And of course, I went immediately into fear. You know, you can imagine I had lots to burn that night in the burning bowl. That burning bowl never stopped. But I pulled myself together and I started my work. I started praying. The first thing I did, I asked for prayer support, my chaplains, my board, my church. I asked for prayer support. I called Silent Unity. I pulled every book off my shelf. I started reading and researching and studying and everything I could. And I remembered a year before, a friend of mine had, a minister actually, another Unity minister friend of mine, introduced me to Dr. Joel Furman. I don't know if any of you know him. And I had one of his books. And I pulled it off the sheet. He used to do a lot of PBS specials, and he calls it a nutritarian diet, whole food, plant-based. And so I immediately started on that diet. Went totally squeaky clean. No salt, oil, sugar, flour, alcohol. No processed food. No meat, fish, eggs, cheese. Really, really squeaky clean. Lots of juicing. Flooding, lots of greens, flooding my body with nutrition. And then, I also had an appointment with the surgeon. He referred me to the radiation oncologist. Luckily, it was early enough that I didn't have to do the chemo bit, which, thank goodness. I just had to do a lumpectomy and then radiation. But I had a congregant, and I love when you put the feelers out, the information that you get back. I had a congregant who also worked for me, who had had breast cancer, and had worked with a naturopathic oncologist. Who knew? But I'm in Seattle area, and there's lots of alternative modalities. So in conjunction with the radiation oncologist, I also went to this naturopathic oncologist who supported me in my diet, put me on supplements before surgery, after surgery, told me to start exercising. I was walking an hour a day. He said, reduce your stress. I was at church. That's, as much as I could reduce the stress of the church office and Sundays. I also checked in once a week to this wonderful Korean women's spa in the area. I spent all day there nurturing myself. So I changed my whole lifestyle. And went through the surgery, and when I got to the point to see the radiation oncologist again, I walked in, he said, you look great. I said, I'd lost 20 pounds, I'm fit, I'm radiant, and he's kind of told me about the percentage of non-reoccurrence that you can have with radiation. And he said, what you're doing now, your lifestyle, your diet, your exercise, everything you're doing. He said, you're getting about the same percentage for non-reoccurrence as the radiation. And so Bill looks at him and says, if she were your mother, what would you tell her? And he said, not to do the radiation. And so I didn't. My surgeon was really upset with me. He said, the deal was surgery and radiation. And I said, I'm sorry. I choose not to do the radiation. He did not believe me that the radiation oncologist said he wouldn't even recommend it. But I took charge of my body. And I said, this is right for me. And since I had that affirmation that what I was doing was just as good as the radiation or better, I thought, I'm sticking to this path. And so here, 10 plus years, and I'm cancer-free. So, yay. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Jesus said, in this godless world, you will continue to experience difficulties. I'm never going to say it's easy. He said, but take heart. I've conquered the world. Jesus is saying, yeah, in this life, you're going to have experiences that you wish weren't happening. In this life, there are going to be things that seem out of your control. In this life, you have to learn how to trust and surrender, or you will lose your peace. So you can say, this is what's happening, and I trust the process. This is what's happening, but I trust there is something greater that's coming through me. Now do your work, one foot in front of the other. Study, do your research. It's so easy when you hear that diagnosis to get frozen and stuck. But just keep moving. And when you surrender, when you trust the process, then you begin to grow in spiritual strength. And when you choose how you will respond, in that lies your power. So don't look for anyone to blame or to make wrong. Stay centered, walk in faith, surrender, and trust the process. So when things happen around you that you wish weren't happening, there is a mantra that I like to use. It's a very spiritual mantra. And it's just 2 words. When there's nothing you can do to change a situation, say, oh well. Oh well. And then you can even take a deep breath with that and say, oh well. Now what? Oh well, now what? Not why me, God. But what? Say it with me. Oh well, now what? Now why are we blind? Why is this happening? The Christ within you says, look for what God can do through you. Look for the greater, whatever it is that's trying to come forth through you. And your job is to choose a response that asks you to see the situation in a new way. In a way where the greatest good that is trying to come forth can come forth. And so we have the ability to choose whether we will be devastated or we will, with God's help, see it in a new way. And it might mean not getting what you think you want. But if we stay stuck, then life can't offer us what it wants to give us. We can't discover what it is God wants us to do. So in the midst of a health challenge, or a relationship ending, or losing the job, or skipping being skipped over the promotion, whatever is happening out there, trust in God. Trust in God. And I have an acronym that I like to use for God. The G, the grand. O, overall. D, design. The grand overall design. When things aren't going well, don't say, why me, God? Instead, ask God to show you the grand overall design. And you may not understand it from where you are now, but it doesn't mean it's not there. Okay, we have to trust and surrender. Trust the process. And if you're so attached to your position, clutching, you may never see it. You have to let go and surrender and trust. There's a beautiful verse from Jeremiah that says, call to me. God is saying, call to me and I will answer. Call on me. I'll tell you marvelous and wondrous things that you could never figure out on your own. So God is saying, call to me and I'll show you great and wonderful things that you do not now know from where you are. You haven't seen it yet. The presence of God will show you great and wondrous things in the moment you have no clue of. But you must learn to trust the process. You have to learn to trust. And we have to learn to first trust the process. Don't look for somebody to blame. Don't look for someone to make wrong. Understand what's coming up for you is about you. And that you have the ability to choose how you will respond. The second is trust the grand overall design. Trust, stay open to the presence and the power of God working in and through you in every area of your life. And don't be attached to any particular view, or you'll miss what life is offering you. And then the third one is trust that God's plan will be revealed to you. That your greatest good is coming forth. That's called faith. Faith. And consider this. Your life experience may not only change you, but it may change the life of another person. Especially if that person's on the journey with you. Because I know my husband, Bill, he was changed by my diagnosis of cancer. I know Emily's journey will certainly change Reverend Blaine. And who knows who else it will change? Maybe some of you as you walk this journey with her. You know, when we faced with a health challenge, we learn how fragile and dear life is, how precious every single day is. And we begin to live in a different, more vulnerable way, seeing and living through the eyes of love. And living through the eyes of love in a much more intense way. And so why do these things have to happen? Why me, God? You know, so that God can do something wonderful and marvelous in your life. And in each and every experience, look for the blessing. Look for the blessing. I am grateful for every single thing that has happened in my life. All of it. Because it has brought me to who I am and where I am today. And I love it. I wouldn't change anything. And instead of saying, why me, God? What are we going to say? Oh, well. Now what? Oh, well, now what? And then step out in faith, with a heart full of love. And know that you have the power to create heaven wherever you are. Wherever you are. You have that power. And so use it. God bless you. Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And as Bob reminded you, make sure to see the prayer chaplains after service. They're here for you. If you know someone, or if you or someone that you know is going through a challenge, reach out. Let the prayer chaplains support you. We don't have to do this alone. And so now let's move into our time of meditation. And so I invite you to just close your eyes and find that comfortable place where you can let go and just relax. And from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, relax. Breathe. Release and let go. Relax. Breathe. Release. Let go. And just take a few more deep breaths, breathing in God and breathing out God. Breathing in love, breathing out love. And now let your attention go to a point of light deep within you. Let your awareness go to that still point within. The point where the allness of God is you. And let yourself float gently down into this deep well within your being. Coming closer and closer to that point of light within you. See it becoming larger and larger and brighter. And go right through and into the light. And now see from light. And let's rest quietly in this awareness from the ground of being. Feel the infusion of energy and life and light. And from the still point within, out of the light, hear the words of truth spoken from the depths of your being. My beloved, you are love. You are whole. You are creative. You are courageous. You are radiant. You are perfect life. You are the light of the world. And feel a great sense of gratitude washing over you, filling you to overflowing. And let this be the consciousness from which your every thought flows, your every word flows. And from this consciousness, ask yourself, what are the great and wondrous things God is trying to show me? What is the greater something that's trying to happen through me? What is God trying to do through me? And let's now listen as we rest in the silence. And let every word you think, every word you speak, to yourself and to others, let it be filled with love. Let it be a projection of this light that fills you. This is my truth. This is who I am. This is what God is calling me to do. This is what God is doing through me and as me. I am one with God. I am an expression of God. And I am here to be the light, to be love, to walk in faith, to live with a deep faith and a knowing that God is always, always with me, walking with me every step of this journey. I am never, ever alone. And I know that I have the power to create heaven wherever I am. And for this, we are so grateful. And so as our meditation comes to an end, I just invite you to very slowly begin to return your awareness to this moment, to this time, with a greater understanding of that love and that light that you are. And as you step out today, know that you're creating heaven with each step you take, wherever you go. And for this we are grateful. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you. So now if you would stand, we'll say our prayer of protection, and then we'll sing our peace song. And bless you and send you on your way to enjoy the rest of your Sunday. So, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is.
Where I